We have thus far seen some of the differences between republics and monarchies, and we especially highlighted the issues of privileges and costs to the taxpayers, as these are often arguments the adepts of a republican system for Britain offer, to justify their views that to end so-called exorbitant costs and privilege excesses is to abolish the monarchy. It should be clear by now to you that the republican arguments are deeply flawed, because as we have demonstrated with the Portuguese Republic illustrative example, republics are in fact more expensive to run than monarchies, and the privileges do not disappear by miracle with the abolition of monarchies. In fact, it is very much the case that republics not only increase privileges, they perpetuate them for the lives of all former presidents after the maximum 2 terms they normally serve before retiring. But there are 2 points which we have not yet touched. The first is the royal household by comparison with a presidential household, or if you prefer, how does a royal family compares with a first family, or as it is also known as, the presidential family. The second point to consider is something we call in political jargon cohabitation. We will be dealing with this separately. Because we have already seen that the rotation of prime ministers in the United Kingdom is very similar to the rotation of presidents in a republic, let's use this example again, to look into this point in more detail. Hereditary monarchies are straightforward. There is one royal family. Provided that the criteria informing the family size, and scope of who is considered a member of the royal family is sensible and reasonable, this is relatively simple to grasp and accept as normal. But if we now look at all the prime ministers between 1953 and 2023 and imagine for a minute that they had been presidents of a hypothetical British Republic, we soon realize that rather than dealing with one royal family, we would have been dealing with 15 families, of which one would have been the incumbent in office and a number of the previous would have been the families of retired presidents, but still counting because of the privileges for life they are always entitled to, in any republic.
In republics, the presidency is often split between 2 households, called the civil household and the military household. Monarchies usually incorporate both the civilian and military components in one single royal household, corresponding to one royal family, a more economic arrangement.
So, using our prime ministers over the last 70 years as a hypothetical scenario, where they were instead presidents of a hypothetical British Republic, this is what we would have. However, you may recall, presidential mandates are limited to a maximum of 2, which means in our hypothetical British Republic scenario, both Margaret Thatcher and Tony Blair would have not had the 3 tenures they actually had as prime ministers. Therefore there would have been another 2 extra mandates in our hypothetical presidential 70-year lineup, bringing the total tenures to 17. But for this makeshift scenario, we are assuming just 15 mandates, to simplify. Looking on screen brings an otherwise abstract concept into a concrete, physical and realistic picture of what a republic looks like when seen under the microscope of how it operates in factual and practical terms. Suddenly, it dawns on us and hopefully on you as well, that under this makeshift British Republic scenario, but grounded on factual detail of an actual European Republic country, we would have had in 70 years, 15 hypothetical presidents, which means 15 presidential families, 15 first ladies, 30 households when in office, all of which over a 7-decade period spanning approximately 23 electoral campaigns, followed by 23 presidential elections, followed by 23 presidential inaugurations. The wisdom of this is already dubious, given the British voters' turn-up rates at the ballot boxes. In Britain, hypothetical presidential elections add up to general elections for Parliament, local council elections, and by-elections, both legislative and local council by-elections. But since 9 of our hypothetical presidents are dead, we would have had 9 full-pomp state funerals. Some of the defunct ex-president's privileges pass on to the widow. We can hardly imagine Britain's Republican advocates would allow the dearly departed president's widow or widower in floods of tears as well as destitute on his or her own pension. Taxpayers would foot the bill for this one too, of course. Why not? And given we would have 7 hypothetical former presidents out of office still alive, we would be paying all the pensions, costs and life-term privileges of 7 retired presidents. Extensive to the 7 retired ex-first ladies, for doing absolutely nothing other than laughing their way to the bank at the taxpayers' expense. And at last but not least, we have to add 1 incumbent hypothetical president active in office. This means all the costs already mentioned with the First Lady, security for all the family, plus a raft of friends and acquaintances who would likely join the civil household and military household as aides, advisors, specialists and whatever else able to justify a gravy train for a few more. Plus palaces renovations every 5 years, to adapt the palatial residences to the individual tastes of forever changing presidential families, every 5 years. All at the taxpayers' expense. No European monarchy runs a complicated system like this, not even the British monarchy, even though it still is arguably the most sophisticated and ceremonial monarchy in Europe. Not sure? Let's look into a real example, a small republic, well known to us. Portugal, Britain's oldest ally, since 1386. A nation-state founded as an independent kingdom, in 1143, under a foundational monarchy which lasted 767 years until the installation of a republic in 1910. Of the 112 years the republic has been in power, we are looking at the last 70 years, from 1953 to 2023. Portugal had 9 presidents, since 1951. Of these, at least 2 retired are still alive, of whom at least 1, General Antonio Eanes, has been retired for 36 years. Mario Soares, President of the Portuguese Republic from 1986 to 1996, famously retired with an annual retirement total income of €500,000 per year, which cost Portugal €10.5 million over the 21-year retirement period until his death in January 2017, aged 92. All 9 presidents translate into 16 presidential mandates, 14 elections or so, 16 presidential inaugurations, 16 first ladies, of whom only a short few were actually popular, a few state funerals, a raft of huge expenses with pensions for life, personal and family security for life, personal staffed official office for life, chauffeur and limousine on demand and other privileges. Many of these costs are difficult to quantify precisely. In Portugal, presidential elections come as a top-up to general elections and local authority elections, adding to the concern with voters' electoral fatigue, and the resulting impact on turn-up rates at the ballot box. The president must be elected with at least 50% plus 1 vote, but if abstention rates are high, it is possible to elect a president with a minority of all voters eligible to vote. Presidential elections are deeply divisive for this reason, as legitimacy becomes a variable. These issues are aggravated by the fact that 5-year or at best 10-year tenures are not enough to raise kudos, rendering the presidency of the Republic an anemic representation of the national identity and state nationhood going back many centuries. These are some of the reasons why even after 112 years of a republican system, the Dukes of Braganza, rightful heirs to the crown of Portugal, enjoy far more kudos and popularity, with an estimated 35% of expressed public opinion advocating a return to the constitutional monarchy in Portugal, because, as large numbers of the Portuguese people argue, the legitimacy inherited from history carries more weight and clout than a variable electoral legitimacy that comes in 5-year installments. As a consequence, the Portuguese Republic is, as it always has been for 112 years, a deep fracture and a point of division in Portugal, as the republican system failed to match the Portuguese crown's ability to unite the people in a mutually shared identity. Having shown you earlier what would very likely happen if Britain were a republic and how the Portuguese Republic illustrates precisely that, let's see now what would have happened in Portugal had the republic never been forcibly installed in the country. You will see that the organic simplicity observed in the UK monarchy would have been very similar had Portugal had the wisdom to preserve its nearly 900-year monarchy. We retained the Portuguese Republic presidential succession in the bottom section of the screen, combined with the reigns of Queen Elizabeth II and Charles III as a timeframe reference. So, looking now at the top left. The last reigning king of Portugal, Manuel II, died in exile, in Twickenham, Richmond, on the 2nd of July 1932, without children. The Portuguese crown would have automatically passed to the first male eligible heir in the collateral line descending from the late King Miguel I, who reigned from 1828 to 1834. This would have been Prince Duarte Nuno, Duke of Braganza, as he would have been 25 at the time of King Manuel II's passing in 1932. You will note the timeline was extended from 1953, Queen Elizabeth II coronation, back to incorporate the accession of Prince Duarte Nuno in the historical context as it would, had the monarchy remained the regime in Portugal. Prince Duarte Nuno would have reigned until his death in 1976 and therefore his son, Prince Duarte Pio's accession, would have taken place in 1976, aged 31. Aged 77, Prince Duarte Pio, Duke of Braganza would still be the reigning sovereign in Portugal in 2022. The line of succession in the throne of Portugal is safely secured through Crown Prince of Beira, Afonso, Princess Maria Francisca Duchess of Coimbra and Prince Denis, Duke of Oporto. Let's examine what we have before us more closely. Prince Dom Duarte Nuno would have become King of Portugal in July 1932, reigning for 44 years until December 1976. Prince Dom Duarte Pio would have succeeded as King of Portugal in December 1976, his reign still running for 46 years thus far and counting. The timeline of the Portuguese monarchy would have been very similar to that of the British monarchy, proving beyond all doubt the simplicity and organic economy of a monarchy as the system of choice. There are huge savings to be made in avoiding all the costs of the republican rotation system, which we have mentioned before. We will come back to this point specifically. But perhaps the most important advantage is the stability, adequate preparation, careful training and continuity the monarchy offers. The sovereign comes to head the nation with preparation from an early age and is likely to remain at the helm for a considerable period of time, potentially decades. Decades in turn are the perfect time to prepare the next generation to take on the job when the time comes. Preparation from the cradle to the throne is a valuable asset which translates into wisdom and experience. This continuity, measured in many years or even several decades, offers time and an opportunity to forge a connection between the sovereign, his or her immediate family and the national community, the people. Legitimacy comes from a historical legacy going back many centuries, sometimes thousands of years, as in Japan for example. And it is democratic because the inherited historical legacy is based on the commonest unit of all, a family, just like mine and yours, where democracy is organic and holistic, not political. It is the natural democracy of sperm, the fittest, the fastest swimmer and the most capable of reaching and fertilizing the best available egg, resulting in a baby, the best outcome of a union of two, and who will be raised in a family to become in due time an adult with the skills, the preparation, the training and the wisdom to take the helm of a community of families, a nation-state. No politician turned president can compete or even outperform this organic reality which is common to all of us. At its most basic, monarchy means family. It could not be simpler, and that is what makes it so relatable. In this video, we focused strongly on the economic aspects of a monarchy by comparison to the financials of a republic. In this context we have explained in some detail the pros and cons, the exorbitant costs of an incumbent president added to a considerable line of retired former presidents, all benefiting from an expensive range of benefits. We have also proposed other criteria aimed at giving some clarity as to why the monarchy is a simpler, more organic and more economical system. And finally, we touched briefly on the question of democracy and legitimacy and how they appear in the general framework of a monarchy as well as a republic. But the economic aspects are arguably the most contentious, and often this is the area where Republican advocates make the wildest claims to justify the abolition of the monarchy. In Portugal, a republic since 1910, the media regularly reports on a comparison of the costs of the Portuguese Republic when compared to the costs of European monarchies. The findings are telling, and this is what we learned from recent surveys, proving the case that republics actually cost more than monarchies in real terms. However shocking it may seem to note the massive cost difference between the Portuguese Republic and two of the largest monarchies in Europe, Spain and the United Kingdom, the real shock comes when we convert the cost by estimating what the cost of the system would be had Portugal retained its historic monarchy. What the estimates show is that if Portugal retained its historic monarchy, the current cost of the Republic, almost £3 per year and taxpayer, would drop sharply to approximately 40 pence per year and taxpayer. There are many contributing factors to this. The absence of cumulative costs of retired presidents' privileges and fat retirement pensions certainly contribute to the huge difference drop as seen here, because a monarchy has a simpler and more economical timeline of succession. However, the trend as seen here is clearly commensurate with the average costs in Spain and the United Kingdom, as well as other European monarchies of more comparable size to Portugal if it retained its monarchy, for example, Denmark, Sweden and the Netherlands. In the United Kingdom, the debate surrounding the economics of the British monarchy tends to be more emotional than strictly rational, and on occasion, the discussion becomes toxic, for reasons as varied as straight media sensationalism, political agenda or even malicious political intent aimed at undermining the monarchy, as is often the case with UK Republican advocates. Facts in real terms matter, and it is important to show them to bring context and rational perspective to claims that may not be as materially accurate as they may appear.